Hello everyone, it's that college football guy here with another video. Well, here we are. It's conference prediction time, and today is Mountain West Conference predictions. There's going to be a few surprises. I think some schools are going to underperform from what they were last year. Some schools are going to perform better. And the conference championship may surprise a few people. And then again, it may not. Let me get down to the parts here and get down to the paper. When I did the difference this time versus yesterday, I had to screw up over, and I apologize, over I had saying that Navy beat Memphis. No, Navy didn't beat Memphis. I did the American yesterday. Memphis beat Navy, but I spoke wrong. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm only going to mention the wins, unless we got a school that has, well, very few losses, and then we'll go the other way. Or maybe just do the wins anyway. But we'll just run through the schedule here, what each school was. We'll do the prediction. We'll do the standings, what they were last year, run through the schedule, and then give you the wins and losses. Some teams have good non-con schedules. Some are crazy, and some are, well, cupcake. First off, first piece of paper. Yes, I'm using paper. I'm old school. Forgive me. All right, we're talking about the Mountain West Conference standings for 2021, last year. Mountain Division, Utah State was 11-3 overall, 6-2 in conference. Air Force 10-3 overall, 6-2 in conference. Boise State 7-5 overall, 5-3 in conference. Wyoming 7-6 overall, 2-6 in conference. Colorado State was 3-9 overall, 2-6 in conference, and New Mexico was 3-9 overall, 1-7 in conference. In the Western Division, San Diego State was 12-2, 7-1 in conference. Fresno State 10-3, 6-2 in conference. Nevada 8-5, 5-3 in conference. Hawaii 6-7, 3-5 in conference. San Jose State 5-7, 3-5 in conference. UNLV 2-10, 2-6 in conference. Lost all four non-cons. Now, conference championship game for last year, I'm not really worried about it. Normally I would, but Mountain West Conference is not the American. I'm sorry, but the American's a lot more of it's the premier G5 conference. Let's be honest here. So that conference championship game has matters because it led to the playoff last year. So I'm not worried about last year's, but I'm gonna mark down who hates this year. So here we go. First team. Air Force. Let's read off their schedule, and then I'll tell you who they beat. Okay, Air Force. They're home for Northern Iowa, home for Colorado, at Wyoming, home for Nevada, home for Navy, at Utah State, at UNLV, home for Boise State. Bye week. Have a home game, I use quotation marks, home game against Army in Arlington, Texas. In other words, I think it's a Jerry World. Week 11, home against New Mexico. Week 12, home against Colorado State. Week 13, finishing up home against San Diego State. So that's technically 4 home games in a row. But it's really only 3. But who do they beat? They beat Northern Iowa. They beat Nevada. They beat Navy. Navy's a 50-50 game. They beat UNLV. They pull off an upset and beat Boise State at home. It's a 50-50 game, but since they're at home, they beat Boise. Boise's going to be kind of sidetracked, and I think some injuries, which has been nicking them up the last few years, is what's going to hurt them again this year. They're going to beat New Mexico and beat Colorado State to give them an overall record of 7-5, 5-3 in conference. Now, the next team on the list, we're talking about Boise State. We just talked about their schedule: at Oregon State, at New Mexico, home for UT Martin, at UTEP, home for San Diego State, home for Fresno State. Bye week: at Air Force, home for Colorado State, home for BYU, at Nevada, at Wyoming, and home for Utah State. They beat New Mexico, beat UT Martin, beat UTEP, beat San Diego State, beat Fresno State, beat Colorado State, beat BYU, beat Nevada, beat Wyoming, and beat Utah State. They're going to lose to Air Force. They're going to lose to Oregon State. That's their 2 losses. They're 10-2, 7-1 in conference. And if you haven't figured it out, yes, they're representing the Mountain Division in the conference championship because Mountain West Conference is going to be doing the conference divisions, I think, for 1 more year. But let's look at the next one on our lovely list, and that is Colorado State. Colorado State. This is an interesting non-con schedule. It's their first 4 games. At Michigan, oh boy, Middle Tennessee State at home, at Washington State, and then home for Sacramento State. Bye week, at Nevada, home for Utah State, home for Hawaii, at Boise State, at San Jose State, home for Wyoming, at Air Force, and home for New Mexico. What does Colorado State do? They beat Middle Tennessee State, they beat Sacramento State, they beat Utah State, they beat Hawaii, they beat San Jose State, they beat Wyoming, and they beat New Mexico. That's going to put them 7-5 overall, 5-3 in conference. Next team on the list is Fresno State. Their schedule is they start off with home against Cal Poly, home against Oregon State, at USC, bye week at UConn, at Boise State, home for San Jose State, at New Mexico, home for San Diego State, home for Hawaii, at UNLV, at Nevada, and then home for Wyoming. So, folks, they only lose 3 games out of they're 9-3. They only lose 3 games. They lose at USC, they lose at Boise State, and they upset loss at Nevada, because I think they're going to overlook them. I think that's going to be their big mistake. They're going to overlook Nevada. They're going to lose that game. So they're going to be 9-3, 6-2 in conference. Next up on the list is, the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, or Hawaii Rainbows. I'm not sure which they go by anymore, since they seem to be changing it. And I apologize if I'm wrong ahead of time. All right, their schedule. They have a week 0 game on the 27th of August. Home game against Vanderbilt. They have something else. They play 13 games this year. They play 13. They'll play 12, they play 13. One of the few teams that does. They play 13 games this year. So they're going to have a week 0 game at home against Vanderbilt, home against Western Kentucky, at Michigan, home against Duquesne, at New Mexico State. Then there's a bye week, and then the conference schedule starts. At San Diego State, home for Nevada, at Colorado State, home for Wyoming, at Fresno State, home for Utah State, home for UNLV, and at San Jose State. Who does Hawaii beat? Well, they beat Western Kentucky, they beat Duquesne, they beat New Mexico State, and they beat Wyoming. That's it. 4-9 overall, 1-7 in conference. And now comes the Wolfpack of Nevada. Hawaii was the only team that played 13 games, first off, so I'm going to get that here. Okay, their schedule. At New Mexico State, home for Texas State, home for Incarnate Word, at Iowa, at Air Force, bye week, home for Colorado State, at Hawaii, home for San Diego State, at San Jose State, then they got another bye week, home for Boise, home for Fresno, and then at UNLV. They're going to beat New Mexico State, they're going to beat Texas State, they're going to beat Incarnate Word, they're going to beat Colorado State, they're going to beat Hawaii, they're going to beat San Jose State, and they're going to beat Fresno. For those who are Nevada fans, know they're not going to beat UNLV. They have been beating the brakes off of UNLV for the last 20 years, most part. But I think this year UNLV is going to catch them. They're going to catch them. I think this is going to be the year UNLV beats them. So they're going to be 7-5 overall, 4-4 in conference. Next team on the list is New Mexico. Now, folks, if you remember Temple from the American I did yesterday, who were 2-10, 0-8 overall, folks, this is the repeater. Their schedule: home against Maine, home against Boise State, home against UTEP, at LSU, at UNLV, home for Wyoming, at New Mexico State, home for Fresno State, then a bye week, at Utah State, at Air Force, home for San Diego State, and at Colorado State. They beat Maine, and they beat New Mexico State. They lose everything else. 2-10 in conference, 0-8 overall. It is a bad run. Then we have San Diego State. They have home for Arizona, home for Idaho State, at Utah, 2 Pac-12 schools, home for Toledo, at Boise, home for Hawaii, then they got a bye, at Nevada, at Fresno State, home for UNLV, home for San Jose State, at New Mexico, and home for Air Force. They're going to beat Idaho State, beat Toledo, beat Hawaii, beat Nevada, beat UNLV, beat San Jose State, beat New Mexico, and beat Air Force. That's 8-4 overall, 6-2 in conference. Now, who's next on the list? Oh, it's San Jose State. They are, man. Woo. Okay. Here we go. Home first week 1. Portland State at home. At Auburn. Body bag game. Bye week. Yeah, they're bye weeks in week 3. Really early. This is going to kill them at the end of the year. And you'll see here in a minute. Home against Western Michigan, at Wyoming, home for UNLV, at Fresno State, at New Mexico State, home for Nevada, home for Colorado State. Then they're at San Diego State, at Utah State, and finish off home at Hawaii. They're going to beat Portland State. They're going to beat Western Michigan. They're going to beat UNLV. I'll make sure I have this right here. I have them beating UNLV. It's right here. I wrote it so fast on this one. I want to make sure I'm absolutely correct before I do this wrong. Yeah, they beat UNLV. They beat New Mexico State. They beat Hawaii. So they beat, again, Portland State, Western Michigan, UNLV, New Mexico State, and Hawaii. 5-7 overall, 2-6 in conference. Next up, UNLV. Body Bag Central. Okay, they start off home against Idaho State, at Cal Berkeley, home for North Texas, at Utah State, home for New Mexico, at San Jose State, home for Air Force, at Notre Dame. Yeah, that's a body bag game if I ever heard one. Bye week, at San Diego State, home for Fresno State, at Hawaii, and home for Nevada. They're going to beat Idaho State, they're going to beat North Texas, they're going to beat New Mexico, they're going to beat Hawaii, and they're going to beat Nevada. No, they're not beating Notre Dame. I think a moral victory for them over Notre Dame would only be losing by only 35 points. But UNLV 5-7 overall, which is going to surprise some people, 3-5 in conference. So they're going to have a little bit of an uptick this year. Still nowhere we're a successful program, but they're just getting better. Then we have Utah State. They have home against UConn, at Alabama. Oh boy, that's definitely a body bag game. Home for Weber State. Then a bye week. Actually, I got to correct myself. The UConn game is a week 0 game. At Alabama, at Alabama, home for Weber State, a bye week. Home for UNLV, at BYU, home for Air Force, at Colorado State, at Wyoming, a second bye. Home for New Mexico, at Hawaii, home for San Diego State, and at Boise State. So who are they going to beat? They beat UConn, they beat Weber State, they beat UNLV, they beat Air Force, they beat New Mexico, they beat Hawaii, and they beat San Jose State. That makes them 7-5, 5-3 in conference. Last school is Wyoming. Wyoming. Oh boy, here we go. We got at Illinois, home for Tulsa. At Illinois, by the way, is a week 0 game as well. There's a lot of Mountain West Conference schools that got week 0 games, I noticed. At Illinois, home for Tulsa, home for Northern Colorado, home for Air Force, still 3-game homestand. At BYU, home for San Jose State, at New Mexico. They got a bye week. Then they play home for Utah State, at Hawaii, another bye week. And then they got at Colorado State, home for Boise, and at Fresno. Not a pretty bad run to end the season with, and it shows because they're going to beat Tulsa, beat Northern Colorado, beat Air Force on an upset. They're going to beat San Jose State, beat New Mexico, and that's, I should make sure here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they beat Utah State. Make sure I got 6 wins here. They beat Utah State, New Mexico. From Hawaii, they lose to Hawaii, lose to Colorado State, lose to Boise, lose to Fresno. 4-game losing streak to end the year. Finished 6-6 overall, 4-4 in conference. Now, if you figured it out, as I said, Boise State won the Mountain Division. So right now we're doing the 2022 standings. Because I got them right here. All right. In the Mountain Division, last place, New Mexico, 2-10, 0-8 in conference. Then Wyoming, 6-6, 4-4 in conference. 3 schools tied for second. All 3 7-5 overall, all 5-3 in conference. They all went 1-1 against each other, so it's going to be probably a points tiebreak to see who gets second place. So I'm just listing them in alphabetical order. And that's Air Force, Colorado State, and Utah State. All 3 went 7-5, 5-3 in conference, and Boise State went 10-2, 7-1 in conference. So they're going to win the Mountain Division. The Western Division, Hawaii, 4-9, 1-7 in conference, last place. San Jose State, 5-7, 2-6 in conference. UNLV, 5-7, 3-5 in conference. Nevada, 7-5, 4-4 in conference. San Diego State, 8-4, 6-2 in conference. Fresno State, 9-3, 6-2 in conference. I put Fresno State ahead. I don't know if the tie breaks, honestly, I'm not familiar with it, if the tie breaks are points, but head-to-head. But Fresno beat San Diego State head-to-head. So I gave them the Western Division title. And it's now Boise State and Fresno State for the conference championship, and I got Boise beating Fresno in a nail-biter, maybe even overtime. But they're going to win the Mountain West Conference this year. So you tell me, everybody, how did I do on this one? Make any mistakes again this time? Let me know down in the comments. I want everybody, let me know, please. And always, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Any comments, criticism, or anything else, please let me know. And if you like the videos, you like everything going, subscribe to the channel. And by the way, tomorrow is the final of the Group of 5 previews when we do the Sun Belt. And then for the weekend, it's just going to be some regular college football stuff. And then, because although my vacation ends Saturday, because Sunday I'm back in my truck, back at work. And then Monday we start the Power 5 previews. That's ACC on Monday, Big 10 on Tuesday, Big 12 on Wednesday, Pac-12 on Thursday, and the SEC on Friday. So, we'll see how this goes. Everybody, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, everyone, please be good to each other.